July 28th, 2022 meeting of the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency. Tim, would you like to call the roll?
Sure. Director Cassidy.
Here.
Director Koopman.
Here.
Director Pollock.
Here.
Director Dillis.
Here.
Director Stiles.
Here.
Director Perry.
Here.
Director Ackerman.
Here.
Chair Mahood.
Here.
And we have 3 noticed absence from Director Engfer, Director Koenig, and Director McPherson. Moving on to the alternates, Director Baskin.
Present.
Director Brown is a noticed absence. Director Hutchinson. Director Hayes. Director Lind is a noticed absence. Director Eckwell. And Director Smalley. Okay.
Okay. All right. And we'd like to welcome Tim Carson to this first meeting. Boy, that's a trial by fire starting this one the way
Not
it
a great
is.
start.
But
We did
welcome
test the
to the
system
meeting.
twice today. We did test it twice today, so
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now is the time for oral communications from members of the public on matters within the purview of the agency, but that are not on the agenda tonight. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
My apologies. I see a hand raised from Director Hutchinson. She has now been promoted to a panelist.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised, and there's no one in the room.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull an item from the consent agenda tonight? I don't see any hands going up. With that, would somebody like to move the consent agenda?
Director Cassidy moves the consent agenda.
Director Perry seconds it.
Okay, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Director Cassidy.
Aye.
Koopman.
Aye.
Pollock.
Aye.
Dillis.
Aye.
Stiles. Perry.
Aye.
Ackerman.
Yes.
Chair Mahood.
Yes.
Director Baskin.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The first order of business tonight is a discussion of the response to the Santa Cruz County Civil Grand Jury Report. And if you'll just briefly remind everybody of what the process was on this, we assigned staff to prepare a draft, and that after that was done, 3 members of the board of directors, myself, Chris Perry, and Doug Engfer would work on that draft. So Perrette created a first draft that was based on the responses that we got from 9 of the 11 directors to the SurveyMonkey survey that was sent out, and that's included. The results are included as part of the agenda packet tonight. She prepared that, and then we went back and forth several times and came up with the draft that we're presenting to you tonight. So what we're hoping to accomplish tonight is to discuss that response and get any changes that you would like to have made. And if they're minor, we can go ahead and vote on it with whatever minor changes the group agrees to. If they're bigger, that would require extensive rewriting, then we would probably have to send it back to staff and to the 3 members of the board that worked on it before. And we would take it up at the next board meeting, which would mean it'd be a few days late, but as we discussed before, we didn't think it was critical that we get it in by the August 22nd deadline that the grand jury set. So,
Their mood, can I just throw something out there?
sure.
If, and I'm probably jumping the gun, but if, depending on who, just to keep the process moving along, depending on what the major comment might be, I think it would still be up to the board whether we just went with what we have.
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I meant, yeah. But
Okay.
we're not gonna just have one person object to something that, yeah,
Right.
it has to be a change that everybody, that a majority of the board agreed to. Thank you for discussing that. So I guess, why don't we go ahead and open up the floor to anybody that would like to comment or ask a question about the draft response. And Ruth, I see your hand up.
Okay, I'll start with I've got quite a few comments and I'm wondering if maybe we want to go bit finding by finding through these. My first one is finding 3, and it currently reads, such water users are very likely the most vulnerable in severe drought conditions, and it is commendable that MGA and SMGWA have included private pumpers. And I don't think we should be commending ourselves. I just say that it should be noted that we have included the private pumpers.
Okay, I think that's a sensible minor change. I mean, we could, if we wanted, if there's going to be a lot of comments, probably the best thing to do would be to go, as you suggested, Ruth, through them finding by finding. Tim, can you pull up just the findings and show them on the, why don't we do that? Just start with the findings and we can go through and do them one by one.
Okay, give me just a moment. Perhaps David, Director Baskin can start and I'll pull them up.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to compliment everyone who worked on the draft response. I think it's adequate as is, given what the purpose of the response is in the filing cabinet that it's going to wind up in.
Thank you, David. We appreciate the sentiment.
And technically, we did not have to include private well owners. That's a choice that we made.
Yeah. Any other comments? Ruth, you said you had something else in addition to that comment on finding 3.
Yeah.
Here we go. F8.
Excuse me?
Should we just start with the
Well,
one?
let's see how many, let's let Ruth, so far Ruth is the only person that's raised her hand. So let's see what Ruth has to say. And if it's only on a few, rather than going through each and every one, let's just do what Ruth wants to talk about.
Sure.
Okay, the last one, the recommendation, I felt like the first paragraph was pretty harsh, and I would suggest omitting it and moving the last paragraph to the front of it and having the second paragraph stay where it is.
Are you talking about one of the recommendations?
Yes, recommendation 2.
Can you pull that up?
Yeah, just a moment.
And I do want to commend everybody for the work you've done on this.
Okay, so this is the recommendation that we all get together and make an integrated drought resilient action plan.
Mhm.
And so what you're suggesting is to delete the first paragraph?
Yeah, it feels too harsh to me. Even though I agree with it, but I feel like we don't need to be that harsh. And the last paragraph will say a lot of the same things without.
Can you show the last paragraph, Tim?
I agree, it's redundant, a little redundant. I think they're equally harsh. They basically say it's a bad idea.
Well,
But it is
I,
redundant.
I'm fine with, you know, depending on what other people feel, just getting rid of the first paragraph if people feel that that's too strong. Dale?
Yeah, I am in favor of this as general as it's written, and I do agree with Ruth's comments. And I think that, yeah, getting rid of the first paragraph, it doesn't really add to it. So I agree that getting rid of it is probably better.
Okay. All right. Well, I will, since Chris sounds like you agree, and we'll take it as a friendly amendment then, unless other people feel strongly about it, and we'll just delete that first paragraph there. And also Ruth's comment about changing where it's commendable about including private well owners, that we've that it's noted that it's notable that we're doing it. We can make those changes. Is there anything else, Ruth?
Yes, on this one we just were talking about, the R2, I also was suggesting that we take the third paragraph and put it at the front.
That seems reasonable. Yeah. Okay, we'll do that.
And then on R1, just before that, I feel like we have a line at the end of the first paragraph that says that we can do drought sustainability if you don't read it carefully. And then at the last paragraph, we're saying, no, we can't do drought sustainability. And I think that needs to be, I wasn't able to rework it really well, but I feel like those two are saying opposite things if you don't really read it with a fine-tooth comb.
I think the difference between sustainability and drought resilience, we're trying to say that we're not mandated for drought resilience, but we are mandated for sustainability. It might be, I think that's the point.
That's the distinction. I agree.
Yeah. They're using the wrong terminology. It's not drought resistance. That's not our mandate. Our mandate is sustainability.
Mm-hmm. But I don't feel like this is clearly states the difference, that one says that it'll be a second. I don't feel like it's really clear. One paragraph I came up with was an addendum, and I'm not, due to the unique geology of the groundwater basin and the agency's financial structure, expanding the agency's mandate to specifically focus on drought resilience projects and planning would cause water rates to go up for those served by water agencies, but the majority of the benefits would go to vulnerable well owners who don't pay those rates.
I think that
I guess I don't agree on that on a number of counts.
I was
Yeah,
thinking it might get pushed back, yeah.
I think that it's explained in the first paragraph that basically the road to drought resilience is groundwater sustainability. through this drought resilience in the long run.
And I think I don't want to, you know, even though I'm a geologist, I don't want to blame it on the geology or anything particular to our basin about why we can't take this on. I think the real reason is that it is legally not within our mandate. And so I don't want to try to, you know, sort of weasel out of it with some other way. I think it's important that we draw the line and say, look, our mandate is groundwater sustainability, and that's it. And if we do our job right, in the end, we will help with attaining drought resilience. But it's not anything that has to do with a function of the geology. It's not anything to do with, you know, the way our agencies are structured individually. So I'd rather keep it fairly sharp myself on that. Dale?
Are you talking to me, Gail?
Yeah, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry. Did I?
Yep. You just probably, that's just a hangover, I guess. Okay.
Well, okay. I agree with you, Gail. I think that it needs to just be short and sweet and kind of to the point. And you know, we can say that the groundwater sustainability, that is our focus. That is why we are here. But it, you know, a byproduct could be, you know, drought resiliency. You know, but that's not what we're going to focus on.
I think their answer might be, well, why don't you expand your mandate and include this additional mandate? And I think that's the question we need to answer, is why?
Well, I think we do state that is not the mandate that is given us by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And the powers that are given to us under that. And that's their question. They're asking us to expand our mandate, and we could, but we have no powers under which we could make that happen. Not to mention all the other things about cost and everything else.
I'm not satisfied with this because I don't feel like it answers the question, but I don't want to get into the way. This isn't important enough for me to drag it out, so I'll be willing to go with the way it's worded.
Any other people have suggestions for rewording or?
There's one silly typo on F9, but I kind of like the way it sounds. It's the last paragraph talking about drought resistance.
Uh-huh.
And I like drought resistant. We're going to resist the drought. But I think they meant to say drought resilience.
Okay, this is a typo on F9.
Yeah, I think maybe not. Maybe
Our typo or their typo?
I think it's our typo.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like we've been using the word resilience, and all of a sudden we change it to drought resistance.
That was, I'm sure, just an error.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Are you proposing rebellion?
Yes, that's what I mean. We could go against drought, just resist
Drought
in
insurrection.
our hearts.
Okay, where was that? It was for drought. Yeah. Okay, that's the last paragraph. All right,
Yeah.
We'll go through and fix that.
Amazing how you read something 100 times, and then the last time you read it before the meeting, you see something.
Okay. Any other comments, general or specific? Okay, I don't see any. Let me go out to the attendees because we do have some members of the public as well as staff. Are there any comments from members of the public?
I am not seeing any hands raised.
All right.
Although I think somebody might have just started to speak there.
Okay, I don't see any. What the recommendation is to approve the draft, which in this case would involve 3 changes, 2 of which were suggested by Ruth in F3 to change commendable to notable. I'll go back and make sure that that sounds right when we do it, because I can't find it right now. In the second recommendation, we delete the first paragraph and then reverse the order of the other 2. And then in F9, picking up, instead of drought resistance, it should be drought resiliency. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I move we accept with those changes.
I second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Tim?
Sure, I'm sorry, I missed, who seconded that, please?
Cassidy?
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for the vote. Director Cassidy,
Aye.
Koopman,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Dillis,
Aye.
Stiles,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Ackerman,
Yes, sorry.
Chair Mahood,
Yes.
Director Baskin.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll make those changes and send it off shortly. All right. Next item of business is a discussion of proposed project activities for the near term for implementation on the groundwater sustainability plan. And this was prepared by the staff, and I've asked Tim to kind of give a little bit of a background on this, because this is actually a process that Mid-County went through a year ago and got some funding for. So Tim, you want to take it away?
Sure. So this item is primarily for the board to receive information and provide input on 3 near-term projects that are part of the GSP implementation. And this is a follow-up, a more detailed follow-up on 2 prior board discussions. So at the March board meeting, the board discussed the potential approaches to near-term implementation activities. And then at the April meeting, there was some additional detail that was provided and a matrix that outlined potential projects and a variety of the considerations and activities that were a part of moving those projects forward. And so what you're going to hear tonight are 3 presentations in the same order that they're presented in the packet on the primary projects that were focused upon by each of the member or partner agencies. And what Chair Mahood was alluding to was the Mid-County Groundwater Agency applied for and received an implementation grant, $7.6 million, to help fund the projects and management actions that had been identified in that basin. And as I understood it from the prior presentations, this was sort of a preliminary information to help inform the board about what the potential projects and management actions may be for this basin. I think there was in the Mid-County and presumably here quite a bit more in-depth discussion as the potential projects are further evaluated and identified to be whether or not they're suitable for the grant application itself. The proposal, I think, is a decision to be made down the road. But the purpose of tonight's overview is really to give a more thorough description to board members on what those 3 projects entail. So with that, I think I will hand it over, or Donna can hand it over to Carly Blanchard from San Lorenzo Valley Water District to present on the conjunctive use and utilization of Loch Lomond allotment.
Great. Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Tim, for that introduction. Tonight, we're going to kick off the GSP implementation near-term activities with the San Lorenzo Valley Water District's intra-district conjunctive use project. My name is Carly Blanchard, and I work with the San Lorenzo Valley Water District as their environmental programs manager. Go ahead and jump in. So broadly speaking, the term conjunctive water use refers to the coordinated use of surface water and groundwater supplies to efficiently manage water consumption and natural storage through the wet and dry climatic conditions. In the case of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District conjunctive use plan, conjunctive use refers to the diversion of more surface water flows when available during the winter and spring peak flow periods in order to reduce groundwater pumping with the goals of in lieu groundwater recharge and increased surface flows during the summer low flow seasons. The San Lorenzo River Watershed Conjunctive Use Plan, and I'll refer to it mostly as the CUP or the Conjunctive Use Plan tonight, was developed under a 2018 State of California Wildlife Conservation Board grant administered by the County of Santa Cruz. Its goal was to identify opportunities for improving the reliability of the district's surface and groundwater supplies through conjunctive management of water resources while increasing stream-based flows for fish in the San Lorenzo River watershed. The grant was closed out in June of 2021 and accomplished deliverables including 2 studies, the water availability assessment and the fisheries resource considerations, as well as the conjunctive use plan itself and a CEQA analysis. The CEQA initial study mitigated negative declaration or ISMND was completed through the grant and was released to the public for review from July 28th through August 31st of 2021. At the time, significant public concerns were received, which led the district staff and legal counsel to recommend to the board of directors to go through a more thorough CEQA analysis through the completion of a focused environmental impact report or EIR. The project description is currently being worked up by our environmental consultants for the project and is being planned to be brought to the board of directors for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District in early August. And once that's approved, we'll then come back to the board with the final budget for the EIR. And we're hoping that once the budget is approved, we will be through the EIR process by spring of 2023. So what is the objective of the conjunctive use plan? The conjunctive use plan and its associated EIR looks to divert more surface water flows when available and supplement existing water demand with the district's Loch Lomond allotment to reduce groundwater pumping with the goals of in lieu groundwater recharge and increasing surface flows during the low flow season. Currently, the district operations are comprised of 3 largely independent water systems. That includes the north system located in the San Lorenzo Valley, which serves Boulder Creek, Ben Lomond, Brookdale, Lompico, and Zianti. And then the south system, which is located in Scotts Valley and serves areas of Hidden Glen, Lockwood Lane, Paso Tiempo Pines, Whispering Pines, Manana Woods, and both Spring Lakes and Vista del Lago mobile home parks. And then finally, the Felton system, which is located in Felton and serves only the community of Felton. Allowing water transfers through the entirety of the district's jurisdiction will make conjunctive use throughout the district's entire system much more efficient. And another major objective of the conjunctive use plan is for the district to utilize its agreement with the city of Santa Cruz to access approximately 313 acre feet of the Loch Lomond Reservoir. So how does the conjunctive use plan meet these objectives? The conjunctive use plan was developed as a framework for implementing these projects to improve the reliability of water supplies while benefiting fisheries within the San Lorenzo River watershed through conjunctive use of surface and groundwater sources. Implementation of the plan would allow for more flexibility to move water from where is it available to where it is needed in a manner that creates net benefits for both in-stream flows in the watershed and also the Santa Margarita groundwater basin. The proposed plan calls for the diversion of more surface water flows when available during the winter and spring peak flow seasons in order to reduce groundwater pumping with the goals of in lieu groundwater recharge and increasing surface water flows. The plan also looks to utilize the Loch Lomond Reservoir, as I mentioned before, in accordance with the San Lorenzo Valley Water District's contractual rights. The Loch Lomond water will be utilized to supplement water supply in the north, south, and Felton systems to meet existing demand and to reduce groundwater pumping in the south system, especially during the low flow season. The district does have 4 emergency interties that were constructed from 2014 to 2016 to provide the district with the ability to transfer water between its own systems, so those 3 systems, as well as the Scotts Valley Water District and Mount Herman Association. Currently, the use of those interties is only limited to emergency uses. So that would be in the case of mechanical or structural failure of facilities, bioterrorism, natural disasters, or any other emergencies. So to implement the conjunctive use plan, we need to be able to use these interties on non-emergency uses and for our operations. The North System diversion transfers would promote in lieu groundwater recharge of the Santa Margarita groundwater basin by supplying the South System with unused water available from the diversions within the North System as a substitute for pumping groundwater from the Paso Tiempo groundwater wells. The water availability assessment that was completed as part of the grant refers to the unused potential of water diversions in the North System, as that also exists within the existing water rights, available flows, and diversion capacities that exceed the demand within the service area and then can potentially be diverted or transferred to another part of the system for use. No new construction or water right changes would be needed to implement the North System transfers, but there may be subject to regulatory bypass flow restrictions. And we are trying to work through those right now with the regulatory agencies. The Felton System diversion element involves transferring water diverted from the Felton system in amounts that are allowed under the State Water Resources Control Board's permit 20123, only when water is available in excess of needs within the Felton area. And to implement this element, the district intends to submit a petition of change to the State Water Resources Control Board for the permit, seeking to expand the place of use from the Felton system to the entirety of the system, of all of the 3 systems, so the full jurisdiction of the district. The Loch Lomond element involves utilizing water from the Loch Lomond Reservoir in accordance with the San Lorenzo Valley Water District's contractual rights in supplying water to the north, south, and Felton systems, thereby meeting existing demand in these systems and reducing groundwater pumping in the north and south systems. To implement this element, the district needs to construct a tie-in to the city's infrastructure and upgrade its Kirby water treatment plant that's located in Felton, or create an agreement to buy treated water from the city of Santa Cruz. So the next steps for the conjunctive use plan and actually implementing this project would be development and adoption of the Focus EIR, submission of the Felton water rights petition change, discussions with the city of Santa Cruz to utilize the contractual 313 acre feet allotment of Loch Lomond Reservoir, and then a Loch Lomond feasibility study to understand how raw versus treated water will tie into our operations, and then the construction of the Loch Lomond tie-in and the Kirby water treatment plant upgrades. And then how it's linked to other projects. The project was initially defined and evaluated by the County of Santa Cruz, as I mentioned, with the districts, and it is also listed as a high priority project management action in the GSP that was submitted to the Groundwater Agency in January of 2022. And I'm happy to answer questions, or I'm not sure if we're jumping into the next presentation.
I think it'd be probably good to see if there's any, quick questions first, and then if there are any sort of more general discussions, we can have them at the end. Are there any questions for Carly among the board members? Dale. Go ahead, Dale.
Carly, states that all that you talked about tonight would be around $3 million. Is that correct?
Right, and those numbers are somewhat outdated, and that's hopefully will be confirmed or updated once we complete the Loch Lomond feasibility study. The last study was done, I believe, in 2008, so those numbers are quite outdated at this point.
Okay. Then any timeline you think on all of this? Any idea?
Yeah, so the EIR we're hoping to have completed in spring of next year. And that is dependent on our board approving the budget for the actual development of that EIR. And as far as, water right changes can take a good amount of time. And actually building the upgrades to the treatment plant, I mean, we're probably a few years out. And Rick might have a better idea of how we want to operate or get those pieces moving. And I think he might be an attendee at this point, but maybe we could switch him over.
Yeah, Rick, did you want to expand on what Carly just said? Oop, he was there.
I think I'm here. I don't know, though. My screen is flashing all different directions right now.
There you are. We can see your lovely face, so you're here.
And okay, thank you. Carly's presentation was pretty close on. Those prices are quite outdated, but our timeline would be hopefully 3 to 5 years to see this project through with the upgrade of the treatment plant.
What do you think, Rick? Are the prices 25, 30% outdated?
Given the economy today and the way supply chain and that is, I don't want to guess, but I would say considerably there's an increase, and that will be something we'll look at. But we still believe it is probably our most cost-effective option moving ahead.
All right, that's fair. Thanks, Rick.
Jack.
Yes, thanks for this information. I was trying to understand better. You mentioned, Carly, that there's the conjunctive use will be for non-emergency purposes. There'll be more flexibility in how the water could be used. And then you mentioned something about some limitations on the amounts that could be used in certain ways. Those are my words. But do you recall your comments and what you meant by what those restrictions are on how flexible the use can be?
Right. So right now, the largest restriction we have is our place of use for the Felton water right. So at this time, we can't, under non-emergency situations, move water outside of Felton. But otherwise, all our north diversions and our north water rights are pre-1914, so they have a lot less restrictions on them. However, we do need to go through the CDFW and NIMS LSAA, or Lake and Stream Alteration Agreement process, and those could potentially establish bypass flows. We also have a treatment plant that only has a certain capacity, and Rick might be able to add it into that. So we do have some caps, so we won't be able to take unlimited water and move it around, but we would have that flexibility. So if there was excess water, we could move that to another part of the system.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question? Ruth?
You said that the EIR is expected to be complete sometime next spring. Do you expect any alterations to need to be made to the plan due to comments in the EIR?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think it will be of interest to a lot of different public members and agencies. So most likely we'll end up incorporating comments or going through some different modeling and analysis as part of the EIR process.
Do you think that the volume of water there will be a big ask to reduce the volume of water you're taking?
At this point, with the discussions we've initially had with some of the regulatory agencies that will be players moving this forward, they seem to be pretty comfortable with how we are operating at this point. And as I mentioned, our biggest limitation is our treatment plant just won't allow us to treat all that much more water. So I think them seeing that we have this capacity or a cap of how much we can actually divert and make use of makes them feel a little more comfortable. But I do think we will end up probably putting in some kind of bypass flow restrictions, at least on the north system. So we already have some in place in Felton.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, I don't see any, so let me go out to members of the public. You have any questions for Carly? Don't see any. All right, well, thank you, Carly. We appreciate that update. And I think next we have Heidi speaking on behalf of the City of Santa Cruz Water Department.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Chair Mahood and members of the board. I'm Heidi Luckenbach, Deputy Director of the Water Department for the City of Santa Cruz. I'm getting feedback also. Are you getting that feedback?
A little bit, yeah.
Should I keep talking? Seems to be gone.
Yeah.
Does seem to be gone. So I'm going to be talking about the project and management action of using source water outside of the basin for the purposes of aquifer storage and recovery in the Santa Margarita groundwater basin. I do have about a dozen slides this evening. I thought it might be helpful to share the history that we've all invested in this basin with respect to understanding different water supply alternatives. I want to make sure that when we get to the end and are looking at the project that we could advance, we kind of understand where it came from, the work that has been done, and then the work that is still remaining to be done. I also really look forward to any input that you have. And I'm not able to change my slides. There we go. So again, I'm going to share with you just a brief introduction or history of Santa Cruz water supply planning. I know we all have long histories, and I'm only going to touch on a few high points there. Go through the objective of an ASR project in the Santa Margarita groundwater basin, background and description of the work performed, the linkages with a lot of the other projects and work that's being done. And then I want to share again the project task status sheet that's in your packet, but I just wanted to give a few highlights there.
Heidi, this is Tim. We're not seeing your slides at the moment. If you could share your screen.
Oh. How's that?
There we go. Thanks.
And that's the right screen. Okay. There we go. So again, just a brief walk through history. And I'm kind of pointing this out for a couple reasons. One is we all have a long history of working together in the region. We have a long history of looking at a variety of different water supply alternatives. The first one in recent history, the 1985 to 1989, was an effort done with North Santa Cruz County water agencies, and it looked a lot at regional projects, also focused on local projects for the city of Santa Cruz, looking at groundwater and various interties, and ultimately concluded that groundwater was not adequate to solve the issues at that time. Again, this was just additional groundwater production. It did not use a put and take kind of strategy. The next series of studies for the city was this decade-long 1989 to 1997. The ultimate conclusion of that work that, again, kind of revisited regional water supply solutions was that the city lacks storage. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek or laughingly because I think we all know that storage is a big issue in the region, particularly for the city of Santa Cruz. And so then we moved on to 1997 to 2013. This was, again, a long history of looking at old water supply alternatives. Obviously, the landscape had changed with respect to demand for our agency. The regulatory landscape had changed as well. And the city came up with this integrated water plan, which looked at conservation, curtailment, and then a regional seawater desalination project. In 2013, the city opted to put the regional seawater desalination project aside. However, we had made, like all of our water agencies, pretty good advances with respect to implementing conservation projects. So our demand was quite a bit lower than it was in the previous couple of decades. And the city started the Water Supply Advisory Committee process. This was a 2-year process where we brought in 14 members of our community, and we met for a 2-year period. During that period of time, we looked at probably upward of 80 different types of supply projects. We invited the community and the region to come with us with every kind of alternative that they could contemplate. And the results of that were increased conservation, interties with our neighboring water agencies, looking at water transfers and exchanges, advancing aquifer storage and recovery in both the Santa Cruz Mid-County Basin as well as the Santa Margarita Groundwater Basin, looking at recycled water projects, and then also keeping seawater desalination on the table should these other alternatives not meet the supply gaps of the city and the region. And finally, between 2015 and present time, we are implementing this body of work in both the Santa Margarita and the Mid-County Basin. So the objectives of ASR in the Santa Margarita Groundwater Basin are for the city to contribute to the ability of our department to meet our water supply reliability goals, excuse me, as outlined by the Water Supply Advisory Committee, which we call WASAC, in 2015. It's also to contribute to the sustainability of the Santa Margarita Basin by meeting the sustainable management criteria that are spelled out in your GSP. And then promoting the conjunctive use of resources and regional collaboration, which has been an important aspect of our work over the last number of decades. Trying to grab some water. So the next couple of slides, I want to focus in on this work that's been done since the 2015 period, starting for the city with the Water Supply Advisory Committee on through the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency work and the city's water rights project. So again, the WASAC, or Water Supply Advisory Committee's recommendations to advance conservation, water transfers and exchanges with our neighboring water agencies, look at ASR, recycled water and desalination. The concept of ASR during WASAC, we called it the Winter Harvest Project. And the idea was that we would divert excess winter water from our flowing sources, treat it at the Graham Hill Water Treatment Plant, and inject it into either or both the Mid-County Basin or the Santa Margarita Groundwater Basin. We have estimates that during the winter months, the 180 days, winter and early spring, we could potentially have an excess of 5 million gallons per day, which could contribute to a 600 million gallon per year or so estimated volume per injection into these basins. And at that time, we made this assumption around a 10% loss rate in those basins. I wanted to bring up this slide, which is a little bit in the weeds, but it lays out the work plan that the city has been using to implement the feasibility evaluations for ASR in the Mid-County Basin. We've broken it up into these 4 phases, phase 0, 1, 2, and 3. Phase 0 was a real high-level reconnaissance of looking at published work and also looking at the existing wells. And you'll see this in a couple slides where we looked at the existing wells for Scotts Valley Water District, City of Santa Cruz, and Soquel Creek Water District to get a sense of the basin and how it might function and to the degree to which it would function to meet our goals. The next phase is technical feasibility work, which includes groundwater modeling, site-specific injection capacity and geochemical interaction analyses, and then the development of ASR pilot testing. Phase 2 is pilot testing, and then phase 3 being the development of an implementation plan and that implementation. Behind phases 1, 2, and 3, I'm showing the timeframes for each of these phases, and it is sequential. So we've taken, in the Mid-County Basin, we've taken about 2 years, 3 years even, to get through phase 1 in a way that's, really satisfying, answering the questions that we have about, injection, extraction, maintaining water quality. And then phase 2, we've started pilot testing. We're going to take about 2 to 3 years actually to do adequate pilot testing in the Mid-County. And then project implementation. I have a really long time frame here of 2 to 10 years. That's pretty purposeful so that as we do implement ASR wells, we can learn as we go and make sure that what we're anticipating out of the pilot program is what we're actually realizing in the implementation. I want to focus in a little bit on the work that was done by Scotts Valley Water District during the same period of time that the Water Supply Advisory Committee work was ongoing. And this is from a presentation that Kenny Jenks gave to the Santa Margarita Groundwater Basin Advisory Committee, as you can see on the bottom there in 2015. And this study focused, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with this work, focused on the idea of injecting purified wastewater from the city of Scotts Valley's wastewater plant into the Santa Margarita groundwater basin. And what it, for us, kind of watching the work of the region, it was the first modern information that showed that an injection project is feasible. I'm going to go to the next slide to share with you what we were seeing, which was as an injection project of the 650 acre foot a year of recycled water, the basin is could be filled, and it could be filled in a more or less short period of time to the point where it meets the sustainable goals of the basin. This was interesting and good news for the city in our WASAC work. We had learned quite a bit about the Mid-County groundwater basin through the work that we've done with our Belts groundwater system, as well as our neighbor Soquel Creek Water District. But this was kind of the first, again, modern piece of work that demonstrated an opportunity to at least recharge that basin and potentially develop a strategy that was more of a put and take strategy that, again, was designed and operated to meet the requirements, the sustainability criteria of the GSP, while at the same time providing water supply for the city and regional partners. This chart is from Pueblo Water Resources work in 2015. So this was prepared for the Water Supply Advisory Committee. And again, it's showing the potential areas of ASR in both the Santa Cruz Mid-County Basin, which is shadowed in blue, and the Santa Margarita Groundwater Basin, shadowed in yellow. And the dots that you're seeing, the red, blue, and yellow dots, are existing wells. Pueblo did a well siting study and evaluated, like I mentioned previously, existing wells in each of the basins to understand through the driller's logs and any kind of cuttings what the basin characteristics are, what the existing pumping characteristics are, and kind of helped us further understand the basin's ability to function in this put and take injection and extraction capacity. This project, many of you may recognize because we call this scenario 8, and Pueblo developed this scenario, and you'll see it has 9 wells in the Scotts Valley area that are located in the Lompico, strategically located in the Lompico, and run through Montgomery's groundwater model to understand, again, the ability of the basin to operate in an ASR mode. The alternative was crafted around what we learned from the previous slide and the extraction capacities. And if you remember from the work from Georgina, this alternative didn't work, but it's kind of the foundation of what an ASR project would start from as we pursue it in the Santa Margarita Basin. So we know that 9 wells in this orientation. We know a lot about the injection and extraction from the groundwater modeling perspective. We know that that scenario injected, I think it was 800 million gallons, but 800 acre feet, but it only left 10% behind. So we saw some charts that showed no noticeable improvements in basin restoration. So we learned a lot with the scenario, and we've learned that we have more work to do to really understand a successful ASR project in the basin. This type of work is very similar to what we've done in the Mid-County Basin. We've, I think, run about 40 different scenarios, groundwater modeling scenarios in the basin, as we really try to refine the locations, both, you know, in the horizontal and vertical, to create an ASR project that is efficiently run, and again meets the targets of that GSP. I'm shifting now to some other work that came out of the work and recommendations of the Water Supply Advisory Committee, which was the Santa Cruz Water Rights Project. Recognition that a lot of the projects that had been contemplated by the committee, but also even dating back to the 1985 work of North County evaluations, we really needed as a city to have more flexible opportunities with respect to taking water out of our system, putting it into different regions, being allowed to, or given the authority to, take surface water and temporarily store it in groundwater basins. And then here we go. I'm going to just draw our attention to, in the Water Rights EIR, we did look specifically at ASR in the Mid-County Basin. So the wells that we saw that are existing city wells, we looked at that project at a project level. So the final EIR, the adoption of that gives us the approvals there that we need to advance that project. And then at a programmatic level, we looked at new ASR facilities, both in the Mid-County Basin as well as the Santa Margarita Basin. So there's a little bit of a foundation or framework to advancing at least the environmental piece of that. And then we've also heard about the water, the intertie between the city of Santa Cruz and Scotts Valley Water District that is now in design through the grant. So I think with this project, with the final EIR and the project development, it's giving us a lot of opportunities to work regionally. It's giving us that latitude and flexibility to share our resources, and to a certain degree at a project level, giving us that the foundation to develop projects and begin to pursue them from the feasibility perspective and pilot testing. Touching really quickly on linkages with other projects. I think first and foremost, the linkage of the ASR project in the Santa Margarita groundwater basin with the other PMAs that we're talking about this evening is significant. There's a lot of opportunity through the implementation, at least the evaluation, to really look at and think about how those different projects could work potentially together to help each agency meet their water supply reliability goals, but also meet the objectives of the basin. So to me, that's one of the biggest linkages with other projects. More broadly throughout North County, the linkages are the city is doing improvements at our Graham Hill water treatment plant. We're upgrading it slightly in capacity, but more broadly in terms of reliability, so that we can actually treat the winter flows and put them into the ground or share them through interties and exchanges. That's a big project for us that has potential regional benefits. The intertie again between the city of Santa Cruz and Scotts Valley Water District, and then some intertie work between the city of Santa Cruz and Soquel Creek Water District. Again, just helping us get closer to conjunctive use and regional project collaboration. This is similar to the slide I showed earlier with respect to the different phases of ASR. I just wanted to point out on the slide that we have Phase 0 is, again, that reconnaissance level work, so it's not shown here. Phases 1, 2, and 3, it shows the estimated timeline on the right-hand side. These are long projects that require a lot of evaluation and consideration to make sure that they're done right and well. In the Santa Cruz Mid-County Basin, we have 2 wells that we're in the second year of pilot testing. And next year, we're going to be doing, putting another well online for pilot testing. In the Santa Margarita Basin, we are really at task 1.1, where we did identify and select some potential wells in Scotts Valley Water District for the purposes of pilot testing. And then I think finally, I just wanted to point out on this slide, the city has done some work in the basin, groundwater modeling and water availability. I would say though that I had previously checked the boxes for water quality and hydrogeochemical. And I note there that very high level, I would say it's so high level that I might even push those over to the not initiated yet, although still needed in order to advance this work. That is my last slide. So if there's any questions or other input.
Okay, do we have any questions from members of the board for Heidi? Let's see, I don't see any hands up right now, Tim. Oh, Ruth.
I see a hand from Director Stiles.
Yeah, Drew.
Couple questions. I had one, you showed a chart with the Lompico improving beautifully after 30 years of augmentation. And I'm assuming that that chart was without any removal of the water that had been put in. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That work was done assuming the source water was treated wastewater from the city of Scotts Valley's wastewater plant. So it was an injection only strategy for basin restoration.
And how often is the city of Santa Cruz imagining they'll need to draw on this water? At least for the planning purposes, I don't ask you to be using a crystal ball.
Great, thank you for that. The work that we've done both with groundwater modeling as well as with the ASR testing has, and the strategy being a winter water strategy, has us taking that excess winter water, and by excess I mean it's meeting city demands, it's meeting our agreed flows for our habitat conservation plan, so it's in excess of that, and putting it in, treating it and putting it in the ground in the winter months, and then withdrawing it in the summer months. So that's the strategy that has been modeled and is now being pilot tested. But another piece to that is really understanding, modeling is fine, but really understanding how to integrate that put and take strategy into an operating system. And that in the basin that we're working with in the Mid-County is very different than in the Santa Margarita. So, and the sustainability criteria are different. So as we operate this, we're really trying to, we have to optimize the amount of water we put in the ground and the amount we take out for meeting city demand, as well as aiming towards those sustainability criteria. So the curve would presumably look similar to what we saw in Kennedy Jenks, but it wouldn't be as directly upward because we would be having this kind of put and take strategy, but it would be trending in the same direction.
Dale.
Hi, Heidi. Would all of the water that you're talking about for use in the ASR, is that treated at the Graham Hill treatment plant exclusively? Nothing's treated up in Scotts Valley before injection?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to date, that's what we've been planning for. It's possible that we had looked at a new surface water treatment plant in the Scotts Valley area, which, as you can imagine, is expensive. We have facilities that are close to the Graham Hill treatment plant and some potable water lines that are close to the Hanson Quarry area. So that does make sense. But it's not off the table to think about potentially treating water in Scotts Valley service area or Mount Herman area or this Felton area also. So those things aren't necessarily off the table.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Jack.
Yes, hi. Heidi, thank you for this. I had a question. You mentioned at one point that I think it's a Montgomery study would show that Scotts Valley could receive injections that could fill up, I guess, the area to be filled in a short period of time, and that volumes of injections could occur over 20 years. Was there something special about 20 years? Could it continue after 20 years, or was that just a certain period that was being looked at? Or
yeah, I think well, the piece of work that I'm thinking about is the 2015 Kennedy Jenks work. That was the injection of treated wastewater. And what they were showing is that over that planning horizon, with the resources that they have, because that source water is volume limited, so with that available source water, what they were showing is how long it took to meet the objectives of filling the basin. And I think that was a 20-25 year time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Ruth.
Sorry, my connection died, as it's been dying frequently these days. I have some concerns. I've expressed them to several people on the board, but since we have new people, I'd just like to put them out there again, is that I'm concerned about the contaminants of emergency concern when we're using water treated to drinking water standards and putting it in our aquifer. We have learned the error of our ways in the past with MTBE in our gasoline. Now we're hearing a lot about PFAS. And I don't know what the next problem's going to be. And since Scotts Valley is solely dependent on groundwater, I consider it very important that we work carefully to protect what water we have. So I'm not saying that I'm against ASR with treated to drinking water standards, but what I do want to see is the science of what's in our river, well, what's in the water that's coming out of the Santa Cruz diversions, and what kind of problems could be there, and are there solutions to those problems. So no surprises. I want you all to know what my thinking is.
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that, Heidi?
I think it's a great comment. We as humans put a lot of things into our drinking water sources, and we have really sophisticated technology to take it out. And we have a really high ability to test for constituents at really low levels. So I think those combinations of things make it an opportunity to test for it, an opportunity to treat for it, and then a decision about how much we're willing and able to tolerate in our systems. We know these constituents exist in our source water and the ocean water. It's just a matter of really understanding the degree to which we can treat for them, and then the degree to which they do harm. I will say that the ASR work, even the IPR work that David McNair is going to talk about, is highly regulated, both on the drinking water side and then on the regional board side for the groundwater storage. So there's really robust pilot and pilot test protocols that include water quality testing. So I hear you loud and clear, and it is on our radar, and we'll see what we can do to mitigate that. And I see that Rosemary's hands up as well.
Did you want to follow up on that, Rosemary?
I would like to. Thanks very much. That's a great comment, Ruth, and I think it's really aligned with a lot of the things that we're concerned about as well, whether the water goes in the ground or doesn't go in the ground. We've done a couple of things in the last several years that you might be interested in. They're public documents. One of them is a testing for constituents of emerging concerns that was done in 2015. It's on our website. You can find that report. We also did a water quality vulnerability assessment as part of the pretreatment upgrade planning that we've been doing. And most recently, there was an additional document that was done, a further water quality assessment and source water report that was presented to the Water Commission in public session in March, this last few months. So there's a couple of things out there, but in addition to those things, I just wanted to mention that we're in the early stages of planning for treatment plant upgrade. The basis of design report, 10% basis of design report has just been out and we've been going through it. It does include substantial increases to treatment technologies to give us better ability to deal with total organic carbon, dissolved organic carbon, constituents of emerging concerns, potential future regulations, disinfection byproducts, and the PFASs and the PFOAs. So the treatment techniques that we're going to be integrating into this new upgrade of our facility are going to provide us with really 21st century tools to deal with not only what's regulated, but what's not regulated, and what's there in tiny particles or quantities. So just a little bit of additional information about what's going on and some of the data that is available publicly already.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'm really glad to hear that you're definitely going to be working on the PFAS and related products in there.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Not seeing any. How about from members of the public? I don't see any there either. So with that, let's go ahead and move to the third presentation. Dave McNair.
There we go. Sorry, I was having a problem with my mic. Yes, good evening, and thank you, Chairwoman Hood and members of the board. I'm here to talk about the purified wastewater recharge project that we've identified as something the district is going to take on. We certainly don't have the history or the amount of work done that's been that the first two projects have identified, and it's very impressive presentations from both San Lorenzo and Santa Cruz. Our project, as a matter of fact, has just gotten off.
Video is off.
Oh.
You don't have screen share.
Oh, I don't have screen share. Oh, jeez. I'm sorry. I was just told I don't have screen share. Is that not right?
There we go.
Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'm sorry. All right. So the project that we're doing is the purified wastewater recharge. Scotts Valley Water District has a 20-year history now of using recycled water. We've been working with the city of Scotts Valley and conveying recycled water for irrigation purposes. And as Heidi was alluding to earlier, in 2015, we embarked on on a study to see if we could expand the use of recycled water to help restore some of the groundwater basin here in Scotts Valley. The conclusion of that study, though, was good news. I mean, it helped. It did show that the groundwater modeling that groundwater recharge could work here in the Santa Margarita groundwater basin. We also did another study in 2019 that looked at a more regional approach. The 2015 study was basically working with the City of Scotts Valley wastewater treatment plant and the tertiary plant with an addition of a advanced water treatment facility at one of our treatment plants, then to convey advanced purified water out to the Hanson Quarry area for groundwater injection. We've also been, some of the other things that have been going on is the Santa Cruz Regional Recycled Water Facility Study that was completed in 2018 by the City of Santa Cruz. And a current study, phase 2, looking at the recycled water feasibility, which is evaluating the SoCal Creek Pure Water project, the recent studies that we've completed, and also the groundwater sustainability plan for Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency. The description is utilizing recycled water as a supplemental supply source for groundwater replenishment to help achieve groundwater sustainability through local and regional collaboration. With SoCal Creek constructing a pure water SoCal project, which will be treating Santa Cruz wastewater to produce groundwater that will be injected into the mid-county groundwater basin to prevent seawater intrusion. The Pure Water SoCal project is sized approximately for 1,500 acre feet a year, with a potential expansion up to 3,000 acre feet if there's a need from local or regional demands. The objectives that we are looking at as our projects, there's two different concepts. One is to maximize tertiary production out at the Pure Water SoCal facility, and then conveying that tertiary water to an advanced water treatment facility that would be built here in Scotts Valley, and then conveyed to recharge wells. Concept 2 would be to maximize the purified water production at the Pure Water facility and provide purified recycled water to Scotts Valley, which would go straight into the ground. Both of these concepts could provide non-potable reuse for customers along the way, such as De La Gavia Golf Course, Pasatiempo Golf Course, and Scotts Valley recycled water customers. Concept 1, which is the purple pipeline, is a 10-mile pipeline from Chanticleer, conveying water up to El Pueblo Water Treatment Plant, and from there it will be conveyed to a series of yet to be determined injection wells. As I mentioned before, there could also be pipelines constructed to De La Viega and Pasatiempo for their needs. And then the concept 2 is just to take purified water and convey it to Scotts Valley, where it would be directly injected into the ground. Linkage with other projects. This project is initially defined and evaluated by Scotts Valley Water District and the City of Santa Cruz, and is in the Santa Margarita Groundwater Projects and Management Actions plan. As I was saying earlier, our plan is just, I mean, this project with the Scotts Valley Water District is just kicking off. I do not have a lot of background to provide you at this point. But as we move forward, other than the preliminary feasibility studies, we've got basically just about everything we need to get done. We've got to get done. Some of the hydraulic modeling has been already been done up here, but we need to do more of it. And then cost estimates are still being developed as well. And that's basically all I have. I don't have a whole lot because, like I said, this project has just gotten underway, and we just kicked it off just after the March meeting.
Okay, are there any questions for Dave from members of the board? I have one that just a simple question. Why not just use the purified water directly? In other words, why take it and put it in the ground and then take it back out again when you have to pump it back out and purify it again?
The first project, which you're talking about, this project, the Purple Pipe project, which would be conveyed to an advanced water purification project.
Yeah, well, either way, once you've got the purified water that's to the point that it can be consumed, why don't you use some of that water just directly to provide to your customers? Why do you put it all into the ground? I don't understand.
Yeah, well, the regulations don't allow that right now. We would still require, it still requires a 2-month environmental buffer before it can be withdrawn and used. And our plan isn't to directly to utilize it. It's to try to get to achieve sustainability in the basin. But there's still no regulations that allow us to use it directly, direct potable reuse.
Dale?
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Dale.
First question, I was just looking at, some of the numbers that you have down here, and I know these are all preliminary at this point, but there's a $22 million for tertiary, that would be under that tertiary, maximized tertiary protection. Would you still not have to do, and I see there's a 0 in the other column, would you still not have to do tertiary treatment prior to, the advanced purification treatment?
The Chanticleer site is designed to go into microfiltration and then into RO and ultraviolet. But so essentially, when you take the water straight off the membrane filter, that's essentially tertiary water, and that's what would happen in this scenario. We'd just be taking it right off the membrane filter.
Got it. And then you have a figure for $28.8 million for wells. Seemed like a lot for wells. What does that number represent?
Truth be told, Dale, I'm not sure. It's a lot of wells.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seemed like a really big number for
these projects have real big numbers. I mean,
got it.
Yeah, they really.
Yeah, I can imagine. Any advantage of one over the other? Have you guys even considered that, or is it just too early right now?
It really is early. I mean, I certainly would be leaning toward the cheaper project, which would be to do all of the advanced water purification at the Chanticleer site and then conveying it from there. It is what in the magnitude of $20 to $30 million cheaper.
Right. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments by members of the board? Okay, how about by members of the public? I don't see any hands up there. All right. Before we maybe turn to a more general discussion, if there is any, of sort of all 3 of them together, I think that Sierra, I see you out there among the attendees. There's something tacked on to the bottom of the agenda packet about work with private well owners, something that was not part of the GSP, but it's on there. So you just want to explain briefly what that's about. I mean, I'm presuming that we wouldn't be asking for funding for this because it wasn't part of the GSP. So can you explain that a little bit?
We might want to consider when we see what the scope of the grant application is, that there might be a role that would help with basin sustainability to consider some other options, but it doesn't require the sort of lead time that some of these projects would. So there wasn't, until we know the scope of what the grant is going to look like, it could really benefit a holistic project to do more outreach and education to a different community. That might be something the funders want to see, but it's not something that we needed to put a lot of time into planning now until we know what they're going to be looking for.
Okay. Are there any sort of more general so the idea is that these, as I understand it, these are sort of the main 3 projects that we'd pursue and write up for the purposes of this grant proposal that we'd be writing over this winter. And so is there any general discussion or questions that people want to bring up at this point in time? Let's see. Do I have?
Dr. Stiles.
Ruth, go ahead.
Seems like I always have something to say. I'm sorry.
That's no worries.
This project with Scotts Valley would be using the effluent from the Santa Cruz wastewater treatment plant. Does Santa Cruz want to weigh in at this point about the availability of that wastewater?
Heidi or Rosemary, did you want to address that question? Go ahead, Rosemary.
Could have done this from the attendees list, I guess, but I guess what I want to say is the volumes that we have that have been talked about for use of the wastewater resource, let's call it that, as opposed to a disposal project, which I think is the way most people in the world are thinking about that resource these days. Is that we do think that there is a way to develop the additional 3,000 or the additional 1,500 acre feet in the Chanticleer facility. I think there's a big question in our mind about whether these groundwater basins can store adequate volumes. That's until it's proven. It's an idea. It's not proven until it's proven. And if it can't, then for us anyway, in Santa Cruz and maybe for others, the question of how are we going to meet our reliability needs is going to be a big one without without storage, right? So that's when this direct potable reuse put it into the pipe and waiting for those new regs to come out are really important. And I guess I would say that if it came to that, I'm not sure that the amount of water that it would be going to additional 1,500 acre feet to Chanticleer and then up to the basin, recognizing the model thing that was in the GSP had 1,500 acre feet going in and 700 acre feet staying there as contribution to the basin, and the other 700 acre feet going to be available to Santa Cruz. Those numbers sound like nice numbers, big numbers, but 700 acre feet is not really very much water. The 700 left in the basin would meet the basin deficit. It would not meet Santa Cruz's deficit. So there's a whole series of conversations, I think, incrementally that have to happen. But I think at the outset, there's not a prohibition, and we certainly aren't in a place that we're saying, no, we're not interested in exploring even the project that Scotts Valley has on the table, with the possibility of the kind of shared resource that was laid out in the GSP modeling work that was done. I think the other obvious thing is Dale was noting some of the big numbers. There are big numbers. Having a partner is always good.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I don't see any. I guess we can go ahead and you've received information and provided input, so we can go on to, there's no administrative or staff reports. Are there any individual director reports? Don't see any hands raised. And these are just for future items, which we don't have to really go over this evening. So why don't we go ahead? And unless somebody wants to tell us more about this managed aquifer recharge, that seems like it's still something in the works. Sierra, is that something you want to talk about?
I don't have any updates on that at the moment.
All right. So we'll just, with that, if there's no objection, I will adjourn this meeting. Good night, all.
Good night.